This is Bob Winkler, and I'm with Mark Saylor, and we're here to do the KSDE Test Security and Ethical Testing Practices. Some of the major points we'll cover today are preparing for the state assessments, test overviews, the new text-to-speech requirements, the building test coordinator responsibilities, how to monitor test progress, test security, reactivations, and testing materials, and the ethics of testing. There are some practice tests available. Mark, do you have anything to add about that?
Not really. These are pretty generic. They're just by grade band. So unless it's somebody that's new to the state or a new third grader and you just want to get a little practice, they're kind of worthless.
They also have interims, and they're mini tests. They're available during the school year. They're aligned to the state curriculum clusters and standards. They allow educators to build or copy tests, is kind of cool. They provide immediate results. You can help evaluate students' learning. It can aid teachers in adjusting their instruction, and additional mini tests are added during the school year. The predictives provide an estimate of future performance on the summative assessments. A lot of times these estimates are very broad. So some people really like them and use them, others don't. There's no high school science interims that are predictive, and the student reports at the completion of the test and building reports at the end of the testing window. The last test window is January 20th to January 31st. Here are the test windows. CALPA, February 3rd to March 14th. DLM students use the WIDA assessment. From February 3rd to April 25th, you have the DLM. March 24th to April 25th are the state assessments for ELA, math, and science. May 9th, April 28th to May 9th is for full-time virtual students. History, government, social studies test is actually administered by teachers in their classroom, and they'll enter the results on Synergy. All accommodations must be noted in the P&P prior to the student logging into the test. All right, the test sessions. CALPA has 4. DLM has either 7 or 9 testlets, depending on the subject. For math, ELA, and science, there are 2 sessions, about 45 to 60 minutes in length. History, government, social studies, well, it's classroom-based and locally scored. CALPA is required for all identified EL students, even if they are not receiving services, and for identified DLM students who have been identified as EL. The CALPA test, just to give a quick overview, is K through 12. It's tested in bands. It's linked to a teacher who's also called a proctor, requires integrated headsets. Speaking and writing are scored by humans. SC codes are due by March 7th. Scoring must be completed by April 7th. DLM, or dynamic learning maps, is for reading, math, science, and history, government, and social studies. It requires the completion of a first contact survey in the educator portal and teacher training. Students enrolling after March 24th, 2025, with a DLM as their test type do not need to be tested. There are 2 windows. One is already closed. It's the IEA.
Correct.
And then the summative is from February 3rd to April 25th. If a student is enrolled up to March 23rd, 2025, they count for the state assessments for the AMOs, or annual measurable objectives. They enroll after that date. They'll count for participation if you test them. If you don't test them, there's no penalty. All right, the test in ELA and math, they're aligned to the Kansas College and Career Ready standards. So grades 3 through 8 and grade 10. 2 sessions per content area. Questions will be multiple choice, technology enhanced items, and machine scored. Headphones are optional. Beware of the soft breaks. And check for omitted items between sections and sessions. You want to speak a bit about that, Mark?
Well, once you pass from section 1 to section 2, you really need to go check either monitor screen or run the test admin extract and make sure that there are no unanswered questions. Because if you start the next section or session and there are unanswered questions previously, they become wrong answers going forward. So please be vigilant with this.
For English language arts, there are 25 questions per session. There's no delay like there used to be between sessions 1 and 2. There's no listening piece. TTS is severely restricted this year. And I'm going to have Mark talk just a touch about that.
Well, there should be a separate slide on that, Bob.
Okay.
So let's just go forward.
If a student is a recent arrival, formerly known as newcomers, if their first education in the United States is after March 24th, 2024, they're exempt from the reading test. Read aloud compared to TTS. It's basically the same concept, but a different source. It's read aloud by a human reader in the classroom. TTS is computer synthesized rendering of specific text on a computer screen. TTS is available for all grades for math and science. They don't have to qualify. If you use it, you have to use headphones. All right.
Okay, so I kind of hate beating a dead horse on this one, but as you are all well aware, the text-to-speech for ELA has been severely restricted. So at the secondary level, it's essentially the same as it has been in prior years, except there are only 3 plans that you can use to justify it. That's an IEP, a 504, or an ILP. We can no longer use a SIT or a GEI or individualized student plan. It has to be documented in one of those 3 plans. Okay.
And they have to meet, of course, the criteria for the district read aloud policy in 2024 and 25. We'll provide a place for secondary schools to check off which students need to have TTS. All right.
Okay, so for the elementary levels, and I know that everybody is not liking this, but there's not much we can do about it. It's being dictated to us by the state. So if you do not get an approval on the form that I submit to KSDE, you do not get a text-to-speech. Now then, I've gotten a lot of calls and a lot of questions about, well, what if we just decide not to test them, or the parents decide not to test them? Do not do that. Test them. Do the best you can with this, because remember, if a student does not test as a participation hit, not only against the building, but on your subgroups as well, And so this may not go well if you do not test these kids. So do your best, use PR to your advantage and try to talk it up. But do not let them not test if you can prevent it.
Having a student read the assessment to themselves is not reading it aloud to themselves. It's not the same as having a TTS. And a lot of times this is just a really good choice for students. If they're using this, students must be in a room with a test proctor where the students read to themselves, not read to themselves out loud. No other students may be in the room. The proctor may not read it to them. There's no TTS, so no headphones. Except in math and science, where all students automatically qualify for TTS. Headphones and earbuds are required for DLM students and for certain portions of the KELPA. Also, KELPA students need to have an integrated headset. Math is similar setup to ELA, 30 questions, 2 sessions. There's some resource sheets that are available for grades 4 through 10. We'll put them on the A&E folder on the G drive, and they're available to anyone. Math, everybody can have TTS. No or very limited use of calculator on section 2 of both sessions.
Of course, that's only at the secondary level. There is
Yeah.
no calculator for the elementary.
That's, yes. So, no calculators in grades 3 through 5. Grades 6 through 8, they have a 4-function scientific calculator and kite. In grade 10, they have a 4-function graphing calculator and kite as well. You can use handheld calculators, but you must log the usage each and every time. Science, it's just for grades 5, 8, and 11. Text-to-speech is available to everyone. 2 sessions, about 45 to 60 minutes in length. It's a fixed form. It has multiple choice, technology enhanced items, and machine scored. Use of a math resource sheet on the science test is prohibited. Again, constant reminder to check for omitted items between sessions. Test coordinators must keep on file documentation of the need for each TTS accommodation for ELA, and that's only for secondary. You want to update and verify your P&P spreadsheet on the G drive before you start a test. And you need to give us at least 2 days to get your changes uploaded. And P&Ps cannot be changed once a student logs into a test.
Bob, we probably ought to give them the bad news right here. The old Kansas Assessment Examiner's Manual that had everything in it for
Right.
about 60 pages. Yeah, it's no more this year. KSDE decided to spread the fun out between 3 separate manuals. So now it's kind of a hunt and peck situation. There is a Kansas Assessment Program Test Coordinator Manual that we're referencing here. There's the Accessibility Manual, and there's another one that I forgot the name of it right off the top of my head. But we have been trying to go through there and reference the page numbers and the manuals for where all this stuff is at. So just to let you know, no more Kansas Assessment Examiner's Manual.
History and government, it's grades 4, 7, 11. It's classroom based, scored locally, no exemptions, Even DLM students have to do it. They are shooting for a 95% participation rate. If someone arrives after April 25th, 2025, you don't have to test them. For questions about this assessment, contact Leslie Nelson at 4114.
Okay, high schools. Please, please, please be careful about reclassifying kids. This has got to be done by Valentine's Day of this year. We've had too many issues with kids getting reclassified after the window opens, and then they end up not getting tested in ELA or math or science, and then the building ends up taking a retroactive hit on the kids when the window closes. So please be really, really careful about this. And then, of course, your ACT is, your first one is coming up on February 25th. That's a state-based one. And then the second one's going to be on April 22nd. So work with your counselors on this is all I can tell you.
All right, room lab prep. Have appropriate manipulatives available for math and science. Student use is optional. Remove or cover bulletin board displays, fact tables, charts, diagrams, etc. Anything that would give assistance or advantage during testing.
Okay, test tickets have not changed. So what you're seeing is what you're going to get if you're elementary. And of course, secondary, you're going to get a separate ticket for each content area. So, yeah, that's not changing.
Elementary students have one ticket that'll work for all subjects, best parts. Secondary students have a separate ticket for each content area. All right, your PNPs must be completed by March 14th. And then Mark will send tickets to you after March 14th.
Yeah, the week of spring break, while you're out relaxing and having fun, I'm gonna bundle those tickets up and I'll get those sent out to the school so they'll be available to you when you get back.
Tickets should be printed and then reused. The tickets should be stored in a secure locked location between testing. To activate a test requires a daily access code. Make sure your students get their own test ticket. Mark will send you the daily access code to the test coordinator for each subject for each day. So students log into the Kite portal using their username and password, and then you'll see a screen that shows which tests are available to them. And after they select a test, they'll be prompted for the access code for that test part. Daily access codes should be communicated to your teachers in a secure fashion. Do not leave daily access codes on the whiteboard when teaching a class is not testing that day. All right, you want to talk about this a little bit, Mark?
This is the same as it's always been. Just make sure the students are signed out of their Chromebooks. So that way they'll end up in kiosk mode, and then just go down there and click on the little TPS folder and then pull up student portal. You always make sure that you're up moving around, that you don't have any alien hardware plugged into the machine. So they can have their headphones on, whether they're using text to speech or not. But if they do, and you're doing ELA, you've got to make sure that they're not getting that orange box popping up, because that is Google Speak. And my understanding is that CETE may have some way of telling whether that's up or not, and if it is, they could conceivably throw out all your scores for that grade level at that building. I'm trying to get clarification on that, but if you see it, just press Control-Alt-Z to toggle it off.
All right. Say a student says, hey, there's no correct answer on this question for this question, or there are two correct answers. All right. Do not read the question to see if the student is correct. You say to the student, choose the answer that you think is best. There's one correct or best answer to each question. Carefully read the question, work the problem. You may take note of the test part, question number, and student name, and report that to your building test coordinator, who will share it with Mark Saylor. Teachers and proctors may not store or save any test items like computers, personal storage devices. You can't share items via email or some other file sharing mean. Never, never, never take a picture or a movie of a test item. Do not allow the use of cell phones in a testing room for any reason. Teachers should verify the in/review screen, and it'll show green check marks for every question that has been answered. Doesn't mean it's been answered correctly, it's just been answered. If a student did not show the in review screen to the teacher and went ahead and logged out, you can have the kid immediately log back in and advance to that screen. There may be more than one review in screen when they have soft breaks on a test part. All right, monitoring your kite testing status. I assume that the building test coordinator is going to take the majority of this role, just making sure that everybody's getting tested. So the best practice is to regularly review the testing status. Students can be reactivated by a building test coordinator under the following. You have to record in a log student's name, state ID, grade, subject and part, date and time, reason for the reactivation, the person doing the reactivation, and you have to keep a log on the Google Drive. Students have omitted items or did not finish test section due to illness, time constraints, etc., may be reactivated. You should monitor students so they only complete the previously omitted items. 90-minute window.
That still holds true. So if the student's logged in and there essentially is a minimal amount of activity in that 90-minute window, it should log you off. So just remember, reactivations you only do if the test is in complete status and there are omitted items. If there are no omitted items, do not reactivate a test.
All right, here's some reasons to not reactivate. You can't reactivate if students completed all the test sections, but you can tell they're not giving any effort. Or you can tell that they're clicking randomly. If that happens, I would stop the test right then, have the student log out, try to do some type of motivational talk with them so that they give more effort. Why don't you talk about SC codes?
SC codes, there are very few that we actually use. They should be on the next slide or two, and I track parental refusals just so that kind of helps me get an idea as to, where we got some issues at. But, yeah, I gotta have those as quick as possible. And whatever you do, if you want me to code a child out, don't turn around and test them. Because the SC codes override any test results.
All right, why don't you talk about these two?
Okay, so the codes that we really care about are long-term suspension, truancy, medical, any kind of incarceration or institutionalized individual. And SC 39 is for those special circumstances that we can't cover with any of the preceding four codes. So if you got any questions, just give me a call, but make sure I get those plenty of time to get them in. Otherwise, you won't have them.
Right. All right, building test coordinating duties. They're supposed to train all their staff on test security. Pages 10 and 11 in the CAP Summative Test Administration Manual. You keep a copy of the building's test schedule updated on the Google Drive. You should keep a copy of trainings, reviews done by all building personnel, and you should have access to student plans. Part of the training that you'll do with teachers is they'll fill out a Google form. They'll ask them 5 or 6 test questions about test security and training, test security and ethics. And then there'll be a place for them to sign their name that they agreed they are going to abide by all the testing guidelines. All building level personnel must be trained before the testing begins at your building. They must be an employee of the school system, can't have parent volunteers. All right, local personnel will sign an agreement to abide by the state testing guidelines in that Google form. You can also have them physically sign a document like this. And here's another one that you could do if you want to keep it locally.
Just remember, any of those paper documents that people sign off on, you've got to keep those on file until the window closes.
Yeah. Test schedules must be submitted to the district with accurate information for all teachers and classes. They're due by March 7th. Email Mark Saylor or share it with him when available and place it on the Google Drive. Schedules include specific dates, actual testing times, teachers and grade levels involved, locations, content being assessed, report any breach of test security, loss of materials, etc. to Mark Saylor or possibly Bob Winkler. Mark will contact KSDE, CET, or ACT. Never ever call KSDE. Don't call CETE unless Mark has asked you to do so. Direct all your other questions, problems to Mark and Bob. Testing materials. No one may review test or analyze test items. Test materials may not be copied, reproduced, photographed, etc., paraphrased. Store all testing materials in a secure, locked area. Classroom teacher is responsible for collecting and destroying student notes after, like scratch paper, after a test session has ended. Test tickets should be destroyed at the building after completion of the test. Sanitize your manipulatives as per building guidelines. Teachers should review the following prior to signing the agreement to abide by the guidelines. the Kite Accessibility Manual, the Kite Summative Test Administration Manual, that's pages 22 to 24, and the appropriate testing practices fact sheet. And that will be in your G drive under test security. There's a new fact sheet, has acceptable and unacceptable practices, how to report information on test security and item issues. Teachers and test proctors should read this carefully. Teachers must read to the students the scripts in the CAP Summative Test Administration Manual. It's in pages 26 to 41. They are boring. I hated doing it, but the state does require us to do that. Don't respond to questions during testing that would help the student to understand the question, aid the student responding to an item, or advise or encourage the student to edit or change their response. Teachers may not direct or prompt students to use certain strategies at the beginning of the test session or during the test. It is appropriate to remind students about strategies the day before the assessment. Once testing in a subject has begun, no reviews, teaching, or practicing of tested indicators may be conducted with students who are testing at that time. Don't coach or cue students in any way during test administrations. This includes gestures and facial expressions. Teachers and staff may not say nor do anything to let the student know whether an answer is correct. Teachers or proctors may not ask students how they got an answer. Teachers or proctors may not tell students to review any part of the test.
Basically, just try to minimize any kind of interaction with the student while they're testing.
Well, that's well put. Students can't be required to use scratch paper. Teachers can't grade scratch paper. Of course, assessments are not going to be scored locally. All right. You can't give the meaning of words in the text or in the questions. Teachers and staff may not read anything from the reading passage, the story, to students. With the exception of the reading passage on the reading test, teachers may pronounce isolated words, phrases, or sentences when requested by a student. All right, we can't write enough rules to cover every situation. Here's the guidelines we kind of use. Would this appear to be unethical to an outsider? Could the newspaper or TV make this into a story? What does my conscience say? If your actions, cues, facial expression, tone of voice, etc., encourages a student to make a certain answer choice or to redo it, the question, it is wrong. Don't do that. You want to talk about the monitor visits?
Okay, monitor visits, guaranteed that they will happen. They happen every year. So, whoever is going to get monitored, I will walk down the building with the test coordinator the day before or 2 days before the monitor gets there. I'll make sure that your building is clean. Anybody else that wants me to walk down their building, I would be more than happy to come out and walk your building down for you, make sure that there are no issues. Because every now and then we do have a student or somebody that's fairly well versed in everything, and they'll go home and tell their parents something happened, and then that's when the phone calls start.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't really want to see the state of Kansas on my caller ID pop up this year.
And this is just an example of the monitor checklist. If you're going to be monitored, we'll
make sure that you pass.
there you go.
I mean, where we really run into problems on this is a teacher will slip up on the time when the monitor's there. Otherwise, you shouldn't really have any kind of an issue whatsoever.
All right, that's it for today.
That's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Pause.
Speaking of wraps, maybe that's what we ought to do is do a wrap.
Yeah. And
I'm so stressed out, Bob.
in the meeting